Can you really be too short to succeed? And how much does height really matter? This is something that's always intrigued me because I grew up pretty short. I was 5'3" at 16 years old. So I was kind of worried that because of this, I was actually going to miss out on a bunch of opportunities.
Well, hang on. Just you, yeah? You stays out here. You stay here.
So I've actually done a bit of research into this, and turns out younger me actually had some grounds to be worried. 14.5% of men are over 6 foot, but amongst Fortune 500 CEOs, that number is 58%. That is an overrepresentation of over 4 times. What is it about this height that is so desirable? Because we also see it in female preferences too. On dating apps like Bumble, 70% of height filters are set to 6 foot and over, once again showing this desirability for height. So what does this mean? If you're under 6 foot, do you just give up? I think we all know this isn't true. It doesn't take much asking around for people to come to the conclusion, what is it about these tall people that's so magnetic? Why are they doing so well? And we usually throw out the line, it's confidence. That's probably true. There are a bunch of reasons why tall people will have that advantage. They did a study based on narrow pathways and got people to walk down them, and they'd encounter people of varying different heights. And based on the height, they would more often than not just give way to anyone that was taller than them, and the tallest people were given the most breathing room. And that advantage plays out across multiple domains. And if you think, even on the playground, children are pretty similar, but if you have one kid who's a little bit taller than another, they're going to be a bit more assertive. And that plays out with a ripple effect over a bunch of years and leads to that person still remaining a bit more assertive. But before you go out, put on your gloves and go on the wild goose chase for this ephemeral confidence, I am actually going to tear it down. I don't think confidence is all that. I actually think it's a proxy for a marker of traits that we actually care about much, much more. Confidence in isolation is not actually that useful, and we really don't tend to like it. You see this in movies played out all the time where there's that character with the great bravado and is able to act out all this confidence in the world, but he actually gets undone by other characters across the film that actually have other traits that are potentially more and more desirable. Because I think we are truly after these 2 traits: competence and the ability to communicate. Research shows that we do actually just assume tall people are more competent, and because of that leeway that we give them in social interactions, it gives them a greater platform for them to express who they are. And this advantage gives them the ability to train their communication so they are much more stronger and clearer in how they communicate with the world, because they were given that opportunity at an earlier age. I truly think it is these 2 traits, the competence and your ability to communicate, that we're really after. And confidence is just this thin veil that we associate them to. But it actually used to be a good marker. Back in the day when we used to be in really small groups and really small clans, you'd get found out really, really fast if you were acting totally confident, like you could do whatever you wanted. But because the group was so small, you'd just get found out when you weren't able to light the fire, protect the camp. People would know immediately that your confidence is actually just full of shit. But we don't have the ability to associate as tightly anymore. Because if you think now, we have digital avatars that we can present ourselves as the most confident person in the world. But is it a true reflection? Well, we don't have the ability to have that instant way of checking anymore. And this is why confidence is just a false metric. I actually compare going after confidence in a similar way to people who pursue happiness. It's like happiness is the byproduct of you doing something meaningful.
The problem with the pursuit of happiness is that when life's storms come along, happiness disappears, and then you're left with nothing. And so you need to pursue something that's deeper than happiness. And if happiness comes along, well then, hooray for you. You don't want to despise it because it's fleeting, but it's much better to pursue things that are meaningful than things that make you happy. It's deeper, and it orients you more appropriately, and it keeps you centered in your own life. It makes you more useful for your family and your community.
And in the same way, I think it's a really bad and dumb pursuit to be like, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna go be a confident person. What does that mean? Confidence can fall away in an afternoon, and your differing confidence is like, it's dependent on the situation you're in. So it seems pretty meaningless as a metric of something for you to base what you want to strive for. However, your competence, your ability to communicate, they're solid. They're a true reflection of who you are and a true reflection of what we look for in our society. Confidence is just the cheap flag that waves in front of people claiming to have that. It's not the true metric. We see the undoing of the tall guy confidence myth in the animal kingdom. JordanBPeterson has this amazing anecdote around chimpanzees because they're super hierarchical in how they structure up their living society. And you'd assume, because they're very sort of aggressive animals, they're really, really strong, they're 4 times stronger than the strongest people that we can make. But when they studied the chimpanzees, it was very rare that it was the tall, big, brooding, confident animal that was in charge. It actually turned out to be other traits that they would promote to be their leader, someone who was able to be reciprocal and build relationships, so had the ability to communicate well, and while still being competent. Because whenever it was just the big brooding alpha confident chimp, well, what happened if he didn't do his other duties right, if he wasn't able to communicate with his troop properly? 2 subservient chimps would team up and just take him down. Because confidence alone, yeah, it might be able to get you an audience and it can get people in front of you, but they'll soon find you out if you can't follow it up, because all people are looking for is someone who's competent and someone who can communicate. And you're saying you can, and if you can't fulfill it, they will turn on you. We even see that in the Planet of the Apes movies. It's not the biggest ape that's in charge, it's Caesar. And what does Caesar have going for him? He has the best ability to communicate. He was the first one to be able to speak our language, and he's able to communicate and be a competent leader. And that's what they want from him. It isn't the tyrannical beasts that are in charge. They try and take charge, they try and take it from him, and then it just falls apart. So this video for me is to say, ditch the pursuit of confidence, because it won't really help you. It's something that's so easily taken away. Instead, look to be someone who is competent and who can communicate, because this is what I've tried to aim for. I'm going to run down a few of the ways that I'd recommend doing that. Firstly, let's look at how you can become more competent. I think one of the main reasons we don't is because we actually just spread ourselves so thin that we're not able to develop a specific skill that we can rely on. So my first recommendation is pick a single aim, that rather than trying to be that constant jack of all trades where you don't actually get a sense of identity behind any of your skills because you're just kind of average or even below average at them. If you can have this one shining light of what you're competent in, say that's cooking, you could be a chef, and you're not really gonna care that you're not that good of a singer. If you're an amazing chef, you will start to have this natural confidence that comes as a byproduct of the competence you have with cooking. For me, I wanted to get really good at running. I did that and I ran a marathon this year. I'm super proud of doing that. And it gives me that level of authority that I can actually speak about that. If someone wants to know what they should do to prep, if someone wants to know how to get started with running, then I actually have something to offer. And that's what we want. We want to have something in ourselves that we can offer to the world. Forget this pursuit of just, I want to feel good about myself. Do the work. Do the work and have something to offer the world, and you will start to feel good. Next way to become more competent is to tackle dragons. There is going to be a bunch of things that you're probably avoiding, but they're actually the things that you need to do, because when people try and pick up a new skill, they hide away from the parts of it that they don't enjoy as much, even though that's exactly where they need to be. There's an amazing story of the Knights of the Round Table set out in pursuit of the Holy Grail. And this was meant to be the item of ultimate desire, the greatest item they could possibly find. The issue was, they had no idea where they could go to look for it. And they were situated in this castle in the middle of the dark woods. So each of them stepped outside and looked out onto this woodland area, and they started their search for the Holy Grail, where the wood looked darkest to them, because that is where the value is for you. It's to be found in the darkest part of the forest, where you don't want to look. That's always what's calling out to us to fix any of the issues of our personality, of our skill acquisition. That's where we want to go. We want to go deep into the woods where it looks darkest to you, not to me. Because when you're trying to learn guitar, it's way more fun for you to just be there like strumming away, playing, having a bit of a fun time with it, rather than being someone that's like, okay, this element, this chord progression, I'm really struggling with it. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to have to do the hard work. And you have to concentrate and you actually take mental capacity of effort to get that to work. I read a book called Grit, and it really helped me iron out the difference between that sort of flow state that people always dream of, that is the ideal state of being, and a concept to introduce called deliberate practice. Flow state is that moment where you're almost out of time, that you're doing something that you're so connected to it, it's almost like your subconscious is doing the operations for you. You've slipped out of your conscious brain and you're just performing the action at the best of your ability, that you've got this big challenge, but you're totally prepared and operating on the edge of your ability. And that's great for the performance. However, this isn't how you should practice. According to the book, you should spend a lot of your time when you're practicing in what's called deliberate practice, which essentially means isolating what is your weakest areas and then just nailing into trying to develop your skill on those. It's going to be really intensive on your brain, but that's the whole point, because we do the work before we come to the performance, so you can actually shine, you can be in the flow state for the performance. So if you want to become competent, then stop hiding away from the areas that give you the best opportunity to grow, because realistically, we feel more competent based on our own experiences. So one of the greatest degrees of competence that I think I've ever gained was I left the country. I went to live in Eastern Europe, a country where I didn't speak the language and didn't know all that many people. And just going through this experience, facing the dragons, leaving my home country for the first time, it was huge for me, and facing those dragons made me feel more competent, and it made me have a faith in my ability to proceed and tackle other dragons in the future. And that's the natural kind of confidence that we're after. There's a bunch of ways to improve your competence, but they're my two favorite. It's just pick a direction, pick an aim, and then face the parts of that aim that you don't want to face to. Is go out on your adventure and face all the dragons. It's the most archetypal story possible, and that's because it's the most true. This is how you become competent. And the hero, he always returns with the admiration of the village. He gets what he wants, and it's because he's done the work.
Who makes all these?
I do. And I practice with them 3 hours a day.
And that's how I'd summarize it. It's like, you've done the work. But one thing that I have come across is that some people might be hyper competent, but if they lack the ability to communicate that, then they don't actually get what they want in the world. So you need to almost have this really great product and a way to market it. And one of the best ways we can market ourselves is through our verbal communication and our ability to build relationships with others.
You might think, well, people should reward you because you're competent, and yes, of course they should, but if you're competent and silent, then you're not a problem. You're just part of the background that's keeping everything functioning. And so if you want to develop your career in terms of promotion, say, and salary, it's like you have to be competent and you have to be strategic.
So how do you become a better communicator? For me, there's been quite a few different strategies that I've used, and I'm going to try and speak to some more practical ways to do this, because you could find 100 different resources on what makes the ultimate communicator. So I'm just going to speak about what I did. And one of the ways that I really opened up my ability to speak with people was that I've actually done a weekly forum with a bunch of close friends all the way since lockdown, where we've introduced a topic and we all come together and we deliver our ideas based on what we think and how we feel, and that allows that opportunity for debate that doesn't really exist in too many places. You might be saying, it's like, that's all well and good that you've got a bunch of friends that are organised and willing to do this. Well, here's another option that I actually do. I got a software called Loom, which allows me to appear in this mini little circle on the screen, which is really cool. And I talk through just something that I've written about. And the process of improving is a lot down to the reflection. It's that maybe I'll write a piece, maybe similar to this. Why is it height that really matters, or is it something else? And then I can write through and speak to that in the Loom video, that I'll try and present it, and I'll try and see if I can improve on my articulation each time that I try and do it. But if you do this, make sure to watch the video back. It sucks, trust me, it sucks, because you have to look at all your flaws, all the ums and yeah and all the mistakes that you make, and the time that you're going off talking about nonsense. But you need to actually see all of these, because it's that deliberate practice again, where we're just working on our flaws and putting in the hard work to become that better communicator. A third practical way that I do this, I also send voice notes to my friends instead of just text messages. There is a bit of a pressure that comes with a voice note. Once you've started that, you have to be able to articulate yourself on the fly. And that's something that I've had to become better with as well, because I'm quite a structured guy. And I think putting myself in that moment where it's just like, cool, I need to get through what I want to say and do it in a clear and concise manner, so I'm not dragging on for ages rambling about this and that. So voice notes are a really effective way to develop your speech. Finally, become a better writer. This is a shout out to JP, that he always speaks about one of the best weapons that a modern man can have is his ability to write and speak.
No one ever tells students why they should write something. It's like, well, you have to do this assignment. Well, why are you writing? Well, you need the grade. It's like, no, you need to learn to think. Because thinking makes you act effectively in the world. Thinking makes you win the battles you undertake. And those could be battles for good things. If you can think and speak and write, you are absolutely deadly. Nothing can get in your way. It's the most powerful weapon you could possibly provide someone with.
That's really true, because if you think, it's now illegal to have any kind of physical confrontation with somebody, but you can have a verbal one. I think you'll have felt this if you come across someone that has just a verbal prowess and they're able to kind of flip you on top of your ass, that you can't stand up to the fact that they're more articulate and they'll run rings around you.
And Jeff, you need to be more respectful of our time.
Shirley, if I killed a man, as a Christian, would you forgive me?
I would.
Then either that man's life is worth less than your time, or it's okay for me to be late.
Oh, no!
So consider yourself, if you can't speak and you can't articulate yourself properly, you're the equivalent of someone being in a battlefield that can't pick up his shield and sword. You're just defenseless. So see it as your fight for survival, that you can develop yourself into being someone who can actually articulate themselves. One of the best ways that you can do this is writing, because if you write down something, you might actually find out what you think about a topic. I've found this really helpful for me, because I'm not always someone that can just shout an opinion about something that he's not really heard of. I'm a bit more controlled, and I like to develop my ideas, so when I introduce them, they actually have some weight to them and I feel like they're on solid ground. Well, this is what writing does for you. It allows you to develop and find out, oh cool, this is actually what I thought about this topic. If you're doing writing correctly, that's what it should be like. You're writing on the edge of your knowledge. You're pushing yourself to see how you feel and what you know. So if you want to become a better communicator, part of that is just knowing who you are and what you believe. And a way to do that is through developing your writing. Next time that you start to think that maybe I wish I was over 6 foot, or maybe I even wish I was more confident like someone's over 6 foot, remember this: they're both false metrics and just indicators of what we truly want. You're not at a disadvantage if you can develop your ability to be a competent person and to communicate in an effective manner. If you want to overcome the so-called Tallprivilege, don't go chasing after that magic elixir that is confidence. It's only going to lead you nowhere. Work on becoming competent and have that ability to communicate, and there'll be no such thing as a world where you're too short to succeed.